Good evening. My name is Karen Palmer, and I'm concerned about what we're trying to do with fossil fuels. I'm going to read an article, and it's called "The Costs of Climate Change. Early Estimates for Hurricanes. Fire Reaches $300 billion." And this is a new report starts adding up the damage from the past few weeks of western wildfires and hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. It sees climate costs rising. So this was published written in the end of September. And it's by Sabrina Shankman.
And is this something that you can read in 5 minutes? You can.
Oh yes, it's only 2 pages.
Okay, and then you can add it.
Okay, very good. Okay. The devastation from Hurricane Harvey, Irma, and Maria, plus dozens of wildfires that raged across the West in early August, could result in the costliest string of weather events in the United States history, according to a new report. Over the course of a few weeks, the hurricanes and wildfires left a trail of damage that could add up to nearly $300 billion, according to early estimates from the authors of The Economic Case for Climate Action in the United States, a report released on Wednesday by the nonprofit Universal Ecological Fund. If they're right, the cost of the damage would be equivalent to nearly half the President's proposed 2018 budget for the Department of Defense. The evidence, quote, "The evidence is undeniable. These recent extreme weather events are a continuation of 3 decades trend to increasing numbers, intensities, and costs of severe storms, hurricanes, flooding, droughts, and wildfires," said the report co-author Robert Watson, a former chair of the International Panel on Climate Change. Quote, "Simply, the more fossil fuels we burn, the faster the climate continues to change in cost. Thus, transitioning to a low-carbon economy is essential for economic growth and is cheaper than the gigantic costs of inaction. Adding up the economic losses from extreme weather events, more frequent weather events, and health impacts from air pollution, the report found that over the last decade, the United States has lost an average of $240 billion each year, and that's projected to go up. In the decade ahead, these economic losses and health costs could reach $360 billion annually, the report says. The study echoes recent work by economists who sought to quantify the steep costs associated with climate change. A study published in the journal Science in June found that every degree Celsius that the planet warms could be associated with a loss of roughly 1.2% of the United States GDP. The authors found that those impacts were not distributed evenly and could result in widening inequality. Number of billion-dollar storm rises. So, as was clear this year, the impacts of extreme weather aren't evenly spread across these states. In the last decade, Texas has had 32 storms with economic losses exceeding $1 billion, 4 times more than it saw during the complete 1990 decade. Oklahoma and Illinois have each had 23, a 4-fold increase for Oklahoma and a 6-fold increase for Illinois. Okay. In the last decade, Louisiana has been hit by 4 hurricanes that passed the $1 billion threshold for damages and 4 floods resulting from hurricanes or severe storms with costs at least as high. In one of those events, 20 inches of rain fell in southern Louisiana over a few days in August of 2016, damaging or destroying more than 50,000 homes, 100,000 vehicles, 20,000 businesses, according to the report. The price tag reached $10 billion, and 75% of the people affected were uninsured. The fiscal quote, the fiscal costs of hurricanes are higher than we think, unquote, said Tiana Derungia. If you want, I can spell it for you, but it's, do you want me to? Okay, so it's Tatyana, last name is Deryugina, and who is a professor of finance at the University of Illinois, who was not involved in the study. Quote, most of the time, when people think about how much a hurricane costs, they think about disaster aid, but public medical spending and unemployment insurance spending go up too, unquote. In the agricultural sector, climate change-driven droughts have resulted in $56 billion in losses across the central and western United States since 2012. As climate change progresses, coastal cities like Miami, Boston, New York, Seattle, San Diego are the most at risk from sea level rise. And so since Boston and New York are both on the East Coast, I think we should include Rhode Island as one of, greatly at risk as well. Okay. I'm sorry, I lost my place. Okay. The fiscal year. Okay. Most of the time when people think about how much as climate change progresses, the question is when and how much sea level will rise, said James McCarthy, a professor of oceanography at Harvard University and a co-author of the report, quote, lives and almost $1 trillion worth of real estate in coastal areas are at stake. So what to do about it? The report calls for more efficient use of energy and a shift towards renewable energy sources to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that are driving climate change. Quote, protecting Americans from the escalating economic losses and costs due to the impacts of climate change can happen, said Watson. It will require increased efficient use of energy in all sectors, the share of carbon-free electricity to be doubled or tripled, and fossil fuel generation with carbon capture and sequestration to be expanded, along with installing a carbon tax. Though the scientific consensus that human activities are driving climate change is clear, there's a degree of uncertainty. Peter Howard, the economist director of NYU's Institute for Policy Integrity, said that while skeptics may grab onto the uncertainty as a reason to do nothing from an economic perspective, the uncertainty suggests that we should do more. Quote, human beings are in general risk adverse. It's scientifically known, he said. With the government, you can take pool risk, but you can't do that with climate change. There's nothing to pool because we're all going to be impacted. So I think we need to take that into consideration. So I will submit this. And then I also, I'm going to add a paper behind, and it has research that ExxonMobil itself has done, where it originally was really fighting about, or doing a lot of research about the negative impacts of fossil fuel. And there was a lot of research done at that time, but then all of a sudden they reversed their direction and has really more or less denied climate change, and it has not taken aggressive action about that, at least in the United States. So,
Thank you, Ms. Palmer.